What is up, ladies and gentlemen? It is episode 21, I think, of the Be Great podcast. We got the week 9 slate up tomorrow. We got a game tonight that will be part of the game picks, 9 games tomorrow. It was actually kind of rough to pick 10 games this week because there are some interesting ones that didn't make the cut. But we're going to get right on into it. I'm going to give my week 9 game picks. I'm going to give my Heisman, my top 3 in the Heisman. And then I'm probably going to give my top 10 ranking. And we're just going to go from there. So let's get started. Also, by the way, a great win for Pitt last night. Kyle McCord looked like his Ohio State self, unfortunately, last night, which was unfortunate. 3 pick sixes is a rare sight, but a good win for Pitt. But let's start with the game picks. Tonight, we got one game pick for tonight. Rutgers at USC. It's an interesting one. Um, USC coming off a tough loss to Maryland. They're spiraling out of control, but Rutgers is also spiraling out of control. And with this being at USC, Rutgers having to come all the way to Southern California, I think I got to lean USC here. I don't trust either one of these teams, so it's kind of hard to pick, but I think USC overall has better talent. So I'm going to pick USC. Notre Dame at Navy. I had to put this on here for the simple fact that you gotta give Navy the respect. You know, they're undefeated. It's at Navy, which is I think it's at Navy, or is it it might be a neutral site. It might be a neutral site. But anywho, it's not at Notre Dame. That's what matters. Look, this isn't the Navy team of past. You know, this is a good Navy team, just like Army is a really good Army team this year. Army Navy is looking like a must watch. But I think Notre Dame's just too talented and going to be too much for Navy. I think their undefeated streak ends tomorrow. Give me Notre Dame, and it hurts. It hurts for me to pick that because I would love Navy to win, but I'm going to pick Notre Dame. Nebraska at Ohio State. My brother-in-law, he's an Ohio State fan. I'm pretty sure he's going to be at this game, so it'd be really funny if Nebraska won, but I don't think Nebraska is simply good enough, especially with it being at the shoe. So I'm going to take Ohio State. Although it would be hilarious if they lost. I must admit to you, it would be top 10 funniest things ever. Washington at Indiana. Look, the Maple Missile, Curtis Rourke, is unfortunately injured for Indiana, but I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think it matters, especially with it being at Indiana. If he was out and this was at Washington, I'd be a lot more worried. And if Washington was better, I'd be worried. But Washington is very up and down. Indiana, look, I actually watched Indiana's spring game. Um, oh my gosh, I'm trying to remember because I watched their backup quarterback play in the spring game, and I was actually more impressed with him. Taven Jackson, that's right. I was actually very impressed with Taven Jackson in the spring game. I thought he looked fantastic. He looked better than Curtis Rourke, in my opinion, in the spring game. So I have faith in the kid, and I give me Indiana. BYU versus UCF. This is a 100% danger spot for BYU. They're undefeated, but they're coming all the way to Florida to play UCF. UCF has been a disappointing team this year. They started off good, but have not looked good basically since the Colorado game. And but this is one of those spots. This is a Gus Malzahn spot where Gus Malzahn gets the upset at home against a good BYU team, ends their hopes and dreams. But you know what? I have faith in BYU, not to win a natty or anything like that, but I think BYU is a really good football team. KJ Jefferson has never impressed me, so give me BYU. Missouri at Alabama. This one's a hard one to pick. I'm gonna pick Alabama for the simple fact that it's at Alabama, and B, Missouri. It's looking like they're going to be without Brady Cook, and that's going to be a big loss. So Alabama's lucky that they're not going to have Curtis Rourke, or not Curtis Rourke. What am I saying? Brady Cook. But so give me Alabama. Although I will say, I saw the picture of Ryan Williams getting his fingernails painted Tennessee orange when they just lost to Tennessee. That better have been like a bet he lost or something. Because if it isn't, what are you doing? This man went from having black football tape on his face during the Georgia game that said "kill everyone" to now, a few weeks later, he has painted his nails orange. I mean, what is happening in Tuscaloosa? Illinois versus Oregon. I think Illinois is a solid football team this year, which surprises me. I didn't think they were going to be very good this year, so credit to Bielema. But Oregon's just too good with it being at home. I just don't think Illinois stands much of a chance. Texas at Vanderbilt. I had to add this on here because Vanderbilt's ranked. This is a top 25 matchup. We remember that Vanderbilt upset Alabama after they beat Georgia. Texas now gets to face Vanderbilt after their game against Georgia. But I think with Texas beating, or sorry, with Georgia beating Texas the way that they did, I think Texas is going to show up ready to play, ready to make a statement against Vanderbilt, and I think Texas will blow them out. Unfortunately, Vanderbilt, as I've said, is America's team. I would love to see them continue to win, but I think it stops here for them. Penn State at Wisconsin. I think this is a spot that Penn State and their fans really need to be worried about. Wisconsin's looked better and better as the season has gone along. It's at Wisconsin, but I always go back to what I said when I picked Penn State to beat West Virginia week one. You know, James Franklin, he's not good at winning the big game against a really good football team like Ohio State or like Michigan the past few years. But he is very good at winning these types of games. Games against teams that you're a little worried about and that teams that are good but not necessarily great. He's usually good at winning those. So I'm going to go Penn State on this one. I believe I don't believe in Penn State as in they're a threat to anything. I don't think Penn State's a national title contender. I don't care what anyone says. I don't believe in Drew Aller yet. I don't believe in James Franklin. But and look, they just need to make sure they're not looking ahead towards Ohio State. That's what they need to make sure of. But I'm going to pick them to beat Wisconsin. LSU Texas A&M is kind of I'd say it's the big game of the week in my opinion. Two teams that are undefeated in conference play. One of them's got to lose. I'm going to go LSU here. LSU is one of those teams that has gotten better as the season has gone along. I think Texas A&M is extremely fraudulent. Look, I like Mike Elko, and I think he's going to do really good things at Texas A&M. But I don't think they are there yet. I think Connor Wegman is overrated. I think the team as a whole is being overrated. They have had an extremely soft schedule since the Notre Dame game, which is why they're in the position that they are in. Put it to you this way: if you put Texas A&M up against Georgia, do you really think Texas A&M stands a chance? Be honest with yourself. Be honest with yourself. You don't. You wouldn't. You wouldn't put Texas A&M doesn't have a chance against Ohio State, against Oregon. They don't. Do they have a chance in this game? Yeah, sure. Because LSU historically has struggled with Texas A&M, especially with it being at Texas A&M. That's a tough place to play at Kyle Field. But I think LSU is simply the better football team, and I think they've gotten better as the year has gone along. I think LSU has a chance to have a really good season and even make the SEC championship and make the playoff. I predicted them to make the playoff. But I don't think LSU is a national title contender by any means, especially since they lost their starting running back. They lost Harold Perkins. I think it's just going to be tough for them to really beat or have enough to beat the elite teams in the country. But in this spot, I really like the Tigers. Give me LSU. Those are the 10 picks. As far as the Heisman, look, I've said it the past few times I've talked about the Heisman. I love Ashton Genty. I love the way he runs. I love the way he plays. I think he's an amazing running back. I would love for the Pittsburgh Steelers to draft him in the first round. I hope we don't pay Najee Harris. I think Najee's been fine, but I think Ashton Genty is special. But obviously, this isn't. We're not talking about NFL here. But so Ashton Genty would be my one. I think what he's done this year has been amazing, and I think he deserves it at this point. As far as two, I'd probably go Cam Ward. I think Miami is extremely fraudulent. I don't think they're as good as people think they are. That defense worries me. I mean, they have let up a ton of points over the past 3 weeks, and I think Cam Ward has been bailed out by a few things. I think he's very up and down. I think when he's up, I think he can make most defenses look bad. But when he's down, Miami doesn't stand a chance against a good team. That's plain and simple. Um, but I'd put Cam Ward second in the Heisman. Uh, third would be either Dylan Gabriel or Travis Hunter for me. I think Dylan Gabriel, that game against Ohio State, really kind of helped him jump in the Heisman rankings. And Travis Hunter, he has had an injury, and he, I don't know. I just don't. I think Colorado has to win a certain amount of games and be relevant enough for him to even have a chance. So I think it's really going to be on his team's performance, to be honest with you. But I think my three right now would probably be GNT 1, Cam Ward 2, Dylan Gabriel 3. As far as the top 10, I didn't look, but I'm intrigued to look at the new top 10. I didn't look at it too distinctly. I saw where Georgia and Texas and all that had gone. So Oregon's at 1. That's probably what I would have it. That makes sense to me. The win over Ohio State is enough for them to be 1. Georgia at 2, I'm fine with, obviously. I could understand if you want to put them at 1 with the win over Texas, the win over Clemson. That's 2 top 10 wins. Oregon doesn't have that. I don't agree. Anyone who wants to put Penn State over Georgia, Penn State doesn't have anywhere close to the resume that Georgia has. But I would agree. Oregon, Georgia, Penn State is the top 3. Ohio State at 4, I would agree with. And then Texas at 5, I would also agree with. The problem for Ohio State and Texas at this point is they don't have any impressive wins. The Texas's win against Oklahoma is not impressive. Ohio State's win against Iowa is not impressive. Iowa just lost to Michigan State. So that's not an impressive win. And Nebraska, is that going to be an impressive win? I don't think so. Indiana, we just saw Indiana punt Nebraska into oblivion this past week. So to me, them beating Nebraska is not going to do anything for me. To me, Ohio State won't be able to prove anything until they face Penn State. And they had a chance to prove something, but they lost. And then Texas. Texas obviously doesn't have an impressive win. Oklahoma, that's not impressive. Oklahoma's terrible. Terrible. Their win against Mississippi State, not impressive. Mississippi State's terrible. So, and their win against Michigan, in fairness, Michigan was supposed to be a lot better than they were this year, unless you were listening to me and I told you that they were going to be trash. Anywho, but the win against Michigan at this point isn't impressive either. I mean, there's a chance Michigan doesn't make a bowl game. Like, that could be the reality. So Miami at 6 is fine with me. Miami's been bailed out by a few things. They easily could have lost all 3 games the past 3 weeks. So I think them being at 6 is fine. Tennessee at 7, I agree with that as well. The win against Alabama pushes them up, although we can start to ask how good is Alabama. Um, but that's at least an impressive win for now for Tennessee. LSU at 8 is fine. LSU is also one that, I mean, their most impressive win is Ole Miss, but again, how impressive of a win that is, we're kind of having to wait and see on that because I mean Kentucky beat Ole Miss too, and it's looking like Ole Miss might have a couple more losses coming down the road, but we'll see. Clemson at 9, I agree with. Iowa State at 10, I also agree with. I think these are the top 10 teams in the country. BYU right outside at 11, I 100% agree with as well. I don't agree with Notre Dame being ahead of Indiana. I would consider Indiana at 10 as well with Iowa State, BYU. Um, but I don't mind it being Iowa State in that spot. I'd probably put Iowa State in that spot as well. Is there anyone in the top 25? Because usually towards the end of the top 25, there's teams that are in the top 25 that I just don't agree with. But they finally gave respect to Army, Navy, and Vanderbilt. It's kind of like they did this on purpose. Army 23, Navy 24, Vandy 25. I like that they did that though, and all 3 of those teams absolutely 100% deserve to be ranked. Even if for Navy and Vanderbilt, it might come crashing down this weekend. Navy facing Notre Dame, Vanderbilt facing Texas. I'm at least happy that they put them in the rankings for this week and gave them that respect that they deserved. Ooh. I said this in, was it last week or was it last episode, where I feel like every Friday when I do picks, I go so fast. It's because like when I start talking and I start getting into it and everything, I just kind of just ramble and talk so fast because I just have a lot of things to say and I just start going. And I'm sitting here. I've gone through 10 game picks. I've gone through Heisman. I've gone through the AP poll, and we're not even 20 minutes in. But I'm excited though for the Week 9 slate. What's interesting? I heard David Pollock. I saw a video or a clip of David Pollock on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. And he was talking about the targeting rule, and I couldn't agree more with what he said. He said, and I've thought this for a while, he said that if an offensive player lowers their head and helps to initiate the helmet to helmet contact, the offensive player should get a penalty and kicked out of the game as well, along with the defensive player. And I could not agree more. I do not understand why we only punish defensive players for hitting helmet to helmet when a lot of the times it's the offensive player's fault that it even happens because they lowered their head first. See, that I just don't understand. I've never understood it. Because if it's really about player safety, then they both should be kicked out. If it's about player safety, but that just doesn't make sense to me. And I ranted about the refs on Tuesday after the Georgia Texas debacle, and you saw it again last night with the Vikings Rams. I know this isn't an NFL thing, but it's the same premise, kind of where Sam Darnold, the Vikings quarterback, he got literally his head almost taken off from a face mask, but they didn't call the face mask, so it ended up being a safety for the Rams, and the Rams won. What I don't understand, and I tweeted it out last night after that game, and I said it on this podcast on Tuesday. I don't understand why we do not hold refs accountable. Why does the NCAA, the conferences, the NFL, why do we not hold these refs accountable? Why are they not forced to go to a post-game press conference, just like the teams are, just like the coaches are forced to, just like the players are forced to. Why are the refs not forced to go to a post-game press conference and answer for the calls they make or the lack of calls they make, for the whatever is reviewed? Why are they not questioned? They just get to make a call, change the outcome of a game, and then go home like nothing happened. Like they didn't just change a kid's life. Like they didn't just get a head coach fired. They just get to go home like nothing happened and eat a Snickers with their wife in their bed. I, I don't understand it. And I know why. It's because the refs are not full time employees. They aren't in college and they aren't in the NFL, which is also dumb. Make them full time employees. Why are we have a bunch of part timers out here? Make them full time employees and make them answer to the media after games. I want them to be the first ones up to the podium, not the head coach, not the players. Because you see, Carson Beck goes and has a terrible game against Texas, and he has to answer for his mistakes. He has to answer for his play. Steve Sarkisian lost the game. His offense looked putrid. He has to go and answer for that after the game. But the refs don't have to ever answer for anything. And I do not understand it. It's wrong, to be quite frank. I'm sure Ohio State fans would have loved to hear from the refs after the Oregon game, since it's just a thing now with Ohio State fans. They don't ever lose the game. It's always the refs cheated us out of the game. I've heard Ohio State fans talk, oh, that was not OPI on Jeremiah Smith. But trust me, there are Ohio State fans who think that. There really are. Even though it's blatant OPI, to them it is not somehow. I mean, I've said it once and I'll say it 1,000 times. Ohio State fans and Alabama fans are the same. But I'm not going to get into that because it's going to force a rant. It's going to force a 30-minute rant, which maybe that, I mean, hey, that would make the podcast last longer. But that's an off-season type of rant where I have nothing to talk about. So I just sit here and rant about fan bases. But we're not going to get into that right now. But I think refs need to be held more accountable. I think they need to be asked why they thought overturning the pass interference in the Georgia-Texas game in that moment at that spot was the right decision. And do they think that started a unhealthy and scary precedent? It'll be interesting to see if any fans throw stuff on the field this weekend. Be interesting to see. And look, I don't think it's going to be something where it's going to happen in every game or anything like that. There may be none of it that happens this weekend, right? But it's the possibility is bad enough, in my opinion. But they decided to make that decision, and they don't have to answer for it, of course. But that's all I have today. Shorter episode. Although, actually, you know what? It's not a shorter episode because all the episodes are just kind of short now. But it is what it is. It is what it is. But I will be back on Tuesday to discuss what happens in the Week 9 slate. Should be exciting, should be interesting. We're getting closer to Halloween and the holiday season. A lot of people think we're already in the holiday season, but I disagree. The holiday season doesn't happen until like pretty much the day of Halloween. Although I personally don't really care about Halloween. Halloween's kind of just it's meh to me. It always has been, but it is what it is. I will talk to you all on Tuesday. I hope you enjoy your weekend, enjoy the great football being played, and have a tremendous day.